After review, West Ham at number 19 commits a foul on the goalkeeper. Final decision is direct free kick.
And with that announcement, West Ham's fate may be sealed and Arsenal's title may be clinched.
Hello and welcome to the Sound of Football podcast. I'm Graham Sibley, and as ever I'm joined by Jan Bilton.
Hello.
And Terry DeFallon.
Hello.
Yes, we had a break last week because nothing was really happening. Of course there were games going on, narratives, but things were just moving as everyone really expected them to. And then that all changed. The narrative this week has gone here, there and everywhere, and everyone's got their say. Everyone's saying about how terrible things are, how great things are, and just how interesting things are. At this stage of the season, who would have thought? But it was a great weekend of football, and I've got to congratulate my colleagues here, because this weekend it was finally mathematically assured that both Crystal Palace and Sunderland would stay in the Premier League this season. Lads, Terry, you must be happy about that because, you know, the Premier League mainstays, you didn't want that little niggle of mathematical possibility still gnawing away at the back of your mind, would you?
No, I really didn't. And I suppose it would be the very modern football thing to say that actually it's the most significant thing that's happened to Crystal Palace in the last 7 days. Because the Premier League is worth so much money that it's very important that we stay in it at all costs. Because, you know, Premier League, ascendant and all of that stuff. But of course, I mean, obviously it's not the best thing that happened in the last 7 days to Crystal Palace. But I'm not going to lie and say that I wasn't niggling. I had niggly feeling thinking, wouldn't it be just typical Palace if we were to contrive a way of playing Europa League football in the Championship next season? And that's not going to happen now.
It's not.
For reasons.
It's not. We're going to talk about Palace's bigger news from last week. But first, I'm sorry about this, Jan. You must feel like you've got a bit of egg on your face now because you came in at the start of the season convinced that Sunderland were going to go down. Convinced. And now look, you've been proved wrong. They're staying up. Yeah, I bet you must feel really, 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 really angry about that, mustn't you? Inside. Must be gnawing away at you, mustn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I'm sitting here in my smug palace, feeling all concerned about my prediction. So when we got promoted last season and the club's commitment to youth and being sustainable and all of that made me think that this season was going to be awful. And little did I know that they were going to take all of that commitment to youth and sustainability and just chuck it right out of the window at the Stadium of Light, and then just went about spending flipping great wadges of cash all over the place. And we've had a brilliant season. To be honest with you, and those of you who listen to the show regularly will know I've been consulting with AI to try and work out whether Sunderland were going to stay up. But I actually threw that away many weeks ago. I think it was probably around when we beat Leeds, quite a few weeks ago. I was like, well, we're staying up now, it's safe. So yeah, we're in 12th place. I'm happy with that if we finish there. 12th is usually Palace's spot, isn't it? I'll take that. And we beat Newcastle twice. Yeah, it's been a brilliant season, but thanks for the congratulation. It's nice to be able to celebrate.
And there are still options still available for Sunderland this season because, as you say, they're 12th, but they're only 3 points behind Brentford, who are in 8th place, and it looks for all the world as if 8th could be good enough for Europe. Sunderland's in Europe, Jan. Are you ready for that sort of journey?
Well, it would be wonderful if it happened. I don't think it will, though. We've got Everton and Chelsea in the last 2 games of the season.
who are your rivals for that 8th spot as well?
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you're the sort of person who gets excited about the lower ranking European qualifications at the end of the season, and let's face it, we are, and I think if you listen to this podcast, you're that sort of cove as well, I'd imagine as well, listener. But it's great. It's like a little mini playoff for the Conference League spots.
Yeah, it'll be great. I mean, if we can get into, I wasn't even expecting that, but if we can do that, that'll be a real achievement. Probably the biggest achievement since, I don't know, FA Cup win? Sunderland again. Well, the last time Sunderland won the FA Cup, obviously they went into Europe, but it'll be up there, definitely.
Yeah, Terry, it's perfectly fine to get some excitement from the jostling around outside of the Champions League spots. Actually, the Champions League places could still be up for grabs, looking like they were sewn up about a week or so ago. But because Villa and Liverpool have been so abject recently, and the fact that both of them, in their flip-flops, play each other next weekend, means that at least one of those sides could go into the final week of the season having to win to actually keep hold of their Champions League place. That's quite important, isn't it?
It's very important because, as we know, the Champions League is very important and it's an important competition to qualify for. And to have worked the whole season trying to qualify for it, to then slip away in the final few weeks would be pretty devastating. Villa, of course, they've got some proper jeopardy going on there because they've got two methods into the Champions League, but they could end up blowing both if they're not careful. Because one, they could, as you say, Graham, they could mess up the league entry and finish 6th, or they could lose to Freiburg in the Europa League final, which I sincerely hope they do. With all apologies to Villa fans, no shade on Villa, I just think it would be amazing for Freiburg to win something because they are an amazing football club. So there's peril and jeopardy all over the place. Even leaving aside any kind of red-heady kind of cynicism about qualifying for Europe. Playing in Europe is amazing. It's brilliant. It's great. You know, more teams should do it. Well, actually, I don't mean that. My team should do it more often, is what I actually meant to say. So, yeah, it is a great thing to qualify for Europe, and I think it's a great feeling. And I remember how gutted I was when we weren't able to play in the Europa League at the beginning of the season, to know how special it is to actually do that. So it's well worth pursuing and taking an interest in, albeit perhaps for the neutral there are maybe higher stakes matches coming up over the next couple of weeks or a couple of fixtures to gaze at. But yeah, it is nice to have a really exciting climax to the Premier League season.
It is. But I want to stick with Palace though for the moment because you were at Selhurst Park last week to see Palace qualify for the final of the Conference League. It looked like it was a bit of a party atmosphere there. Never in doubt, was it?
Oh, it was in doubt, yeah. I mean, it shouldn't... it doesn't... We have, because our ultra group are very much in that kind of European thing where they just sing no matter what, no matter how nervous and uptight they are, they sing anyway. And I think when you're watching it on the television, that kind of comes through. But I think with the rest of the stadium, there was a lot of, well, I mean, I would say sitting on the edge of the seats, but it's Selhurst Park. There is only the edge of your seat. There is no other kind of seat apart from the edge of your seat. That's just what it is. But yes, there's a lot of, I think there was quite a lot of anxiety. And I know there was a lot of anxiety because I was there. This was the most nervous I've been going along to a Crystal Palace football match in decades. I even though we were comfortably ahead in the tie. But, you know, it's Palace. We've never done this before. You know, you just don't know what to expect. But as it turns out, you know, Shakhtar were, just like they were in the first leg, really lively, full of energy, some very zippy forwards, but not really strong enough to see their way through Palace with any degree of regularity. And Palace were able to make it work. And yeah, so the party atmosphere, funnily enough, I didn't think it got proper party atmosphere until the injury time ball came up at 90 minutes and we had 1 minute of injury time. And then suddenly we're all going, yeah, like this massive sort of like breathe of sorrow, little, right, there's no way this can be changed now. There's no way we're going to mess this up with only 1 minute's injury time. And that was really, really good. And it was a lovely feeling. And then we were all making bold promises to each other about how we're going to get to Leipzig and what's it going to do and how we're going to get tickets. Most of which has entirely evaporated over the coming days when the reality of getting tickets and getting flights and getting accommodation sunk in. So, yeah, fantastic. A European final, my goodness. And against a proper football club as well, and not Strasbourg, which is, as I think we've discussed on a number of occasions, a Chelsea B squad.
Yes, indeed, it is. I'm just looking forward to the moment that you somehow get a ticket and then suddenly try to work out how on earth you're going to get to Leipzig. I'm thinking you're probably going to get the Eurostar to Paris, get a change of trains to Cologne, then get another train to somewhere else completely differently, and then get on another train, maybe camping somewhere in the way there. But I'm really looking forward to how that story unfolds. And it could be a whole episode, listeners. It really could.
We'll see.
I suppose we've danced around the real narrative stuff, haven't we? So should we make a stab at going for it? I guess it's time for me to answer some questions, isn't it? Because, of course, the big game of the weekend was West Ham Arsenal. I did the preview for it in the box set, and I did point out that this was the last game of the season that had both relegation and title interest in it. And it didn't disappoint, did it, Jan? It certainly was that sort of game that was so important that they really, really didn't play much football in it, did they?
No, and it was, to be honest with you, I thought it was quite close. Certainly up to half time, I thought West Ham did all right. I mean, they didn't set the world on fire, but they were locking Arsenal out, which was good. And that added to the narrative, didn't it? Because Arsenal really needed to win. So they came out a bit in the second half and made it happen. I know it was in the last 10 minutes, but that last kind of 20 minutes of that game was just, as they say, don't have a dog in the fight. But I felt the tension coming through my telly. So Trossard, he hasn't scored in a while, has he? But he got a goal which was beautifully assisted by Odegaard, who just seemed like he had all of the time in the world and picked out Trossard without flapping or anything. I thought there was a certain amount of beauty in that. And then when the ball hit the back of the net, of course, it all just went crazy. And it seemed like Arsenal were going to go and win it without any further jeopardy or any further excitement. But I think I should pass on to my colleague here to take us through the final knock-ins of that game.
There was a corner in the final knockings of the game, and there was a melee, and Callum Wilson scored. But did he? No, he didn't. Then VAR got involved, and David Raya was fouled. Clearly fouled, he's got to be said. Very clearly fouled. Not just fouled once, but fouled twice, I'd say. And the goal was disallowed. And then chaos and rancour ensued, both in the stadium and also then online, to the amusement and enjoyment of most. To be completely fair, I don't think that the decision to disallow that goal was controversial. The only controversial aspect of it, I thought slightly, was why the referee didn't spot it, because I would have expected a referee to be probably looking at the goalkeeper, because that is the most obvious flashpoint in that moment. That's where the ball's likely to be. That's probably where, if there's going to be any kind of goal-related infringement or shenanigans, then it's going to be entering around there. So that surprised me a little bit. Yes, I know there was a rumble going on around there. It really was. It was like ladders and chairs and all of that stuff. It was like the final act of a wrestling competition in there, which is great. But you'd expect that. It's football. At this time of the season, this is how football is supposed to be played. So it was all to be expected. I mean, I have views and comments, but I'm conscious of the fact that my other colleague, has not spoken on this yet, and he may well take a different view. But I mean, I thought it was terrific, and I felt that it was probably the right result. I'd be astonished if Graham thought differently, but I don't know.
No, I don't think any differently. I think I agree with pretty much everything you've said there. Yeah, I too wonder why the referee couldn't call that on the pitch and then show it to VAR and see VAR try and overturn it, because they certainly wouldn't have been able to. Well, of course they could have done, because VAR can do all manner of whacked out shitty things. But it was the sort of narrative and jeopardy that you didn't need at the end of that game. I wasn't surprised it was going to be that tight, because I think West Ham were on their best unbeaten run at the London Stadium, I think, ever. They'd gone 6 games unbeaten there. They have hit a good patch of form. all right, being turned over by Brentford last week, notwithstanding, but definitely at home they have made it a bit of a fortress. And Arsenal just have forgotten how to score goals, which is a bit of a problem at this stage of the season. Again, going up against Fulham, who were in their flip-flops last week, notwithstanding. So when they come up against a team that is actually quite motivated, they are struggling. But I thought West Ham didn't really offer much. I mean, yes, we were saved by Raya during the second half, but that low block stayed in place for most of the game. And I thought, you're right, Jan, when Odegaard came on, he had a wonderful cameo coming on in the 67th minute, so just for the last quarter of the match, and really showed what we've been missing from him all season. And he's only really been able to be used in very, very small amounts this season. And the same is true of Saka as well. The amount of time we've had both him and Saka on the pitch is just remarkable, really, that Arsenal are in this position. People going on about their squad depth, and they've had to use their squad depth. And we're facing up to the fact that we may have to finish the season without any fit right-backs as well, which doesn't really bode well for a Champions League final against one of the best left-wingers. So, interesting times ahead. But going back to the game itself, yeah, I went through the ringer a bit in injury time in the 5 minutes it took to take the decision. But I guess you can't rush a decision like that, can you? Or can you? I don't know. Yeah, and what do you think? Do you think that warranted a 5-minute delay? Do you think it warranted the referee having to go over to the screen to see if that was a foul or not? What were they doing for 5 minutes, do you think?
But I think because we are where we are with VAR in the Premier League, that I think they wanted to be absolutely sure. I don't agree with them taking... I mean, I don't agree with it being in existence at all, but I don't agree with them taking any more than kind of a 30 seconds to a minute. When the goal went in, I thought, goal, that's fine. There was just a big melee and the ball ended up in the net, and that's all I saw because I see things in real time. Obviously, when you slow it down and you see what happened, it was quite obvious within seconds when you could see, is it Pablo's arm across Raya's chest? And he clearly had stopped him jumping with that arm, that clearly the goal can't stand. Because, I mean, goalkeepers are overly protected at the best of times. That was a clear foul. You would definitely give that any day of the week, wouldn't you? So why it took 5 minutes to get to that, I don't know. Maybe they are trying to prove a point that it's intrinsically important to the English game and kind of a bit of an advert for keeping those guys around. But to be fair, as a spectacle, and I'm sure you didn't enjoy it, Graham, it actually added to the spice of it because it drew it out. It just turned up that anxiety I was talking about before inside the ground to those of us watching on the sofas. And for a minute, I thought the title race was wide open again. Spurs were going to be sucked back into it. And then it was all turned on its head again. So, again, I'm no fan, but it did make for some great drama yesterday. So, for that, hats off.
What do you think about the argument that some people have posited that there are about 7 or 8 fouls going on at once in there and 7 wrongs maybe make a right?
Well, that's certainly an opinion, isn't it, Graham? I mean, we've seen this across the whole of the season that corners have become more and more important and they've become more and more, well, I wouldn't say violent, but there's a lot of tomfoolery going on in there. And certainly in that particular instant, you're right, there was a lot going on. But the reality is that there was a foul on the keeper. The keeper tried to play the ball away and he couldn't. And that resulted in a goal being scored, which shouldn't have been. So they got it right eventually.
Yeah, I agree. As I said, I mean, like it was reaching a sort of climax of a big wrestling competition. I mean, like ladders and chairs and being thrown at each other and all of that stuff. It was terrific. But the central point is that the foul on the goalkeeper is the most critical moment in that. And that's the most critical point. And that's where I think that the referee's attention and focus has to be because this is where the goal is or isn't scored. There is other stuff going on in there. And I think part of the problem is that because, as Jan points out, set-piece defence and attack in that part of the pitch is so competitive now, it is very difficult to understand or know what is a 50-50 racing incident and what is a foul and what is just jostling. And it can't be easy. And I suspect that it's entirely... I wouldn't be surprised to learn that VAR was actually spending a lot of that 5 minutes looking at all the peripheral stuff and deciding whether or not it was actually peripheral or whether or not that's something that needed a ruling on. Do we disallow the goal but give West Ham a penalty, for example? Or do we disallow the goal and give Arsenal a free kick for something that happened over here? And by the end of it, they probably thought, well, sod this. We need to make a decision. Let's just disallow this goal and then, move on with our lives, which they won't be able to do. It's interesting what Jan has just said about the theatre aspect of it and, the suspense that we had for those of us at home. And I think that there is something in that. There was a sort of moment of sort of like, and the person leaving the sewing room is, and the person being a victim is, and then the long protracted delay, entirely false delay, to keep the viewers in suspense. And it felt a little bit like a reality TV show rather than an actual sporting event. And I think that this is just where we are with VAR, contributing to that sense of theatre and suspense and, frankly, false drama. And I don't know how I feel about that. Well, I do know how I feel about that, but I don't know how to advise other people to feel about that as to whether or not that is a good way of doing things. And I think, if I may, it just also underlines the whole futility of VAR, because the whole point of VAR was to be able to resolve these kind of differences. And in fact, if anything, exacerbating them, because people are just now even more furious than they might have been beforehand. But at the same time, what choice do we have? I mean, we have all of these cameras. And if we hadn't had VAR, if this had happened, I don't know, before VAR, with all of those cameras going on there would have been mayhem. But the mayhem would have been like, well, we've got the technology, why don't we use it? And now here we are with the technology, and we are using it. And we're still finding ourselves in sort of like situations where people are just profoundly unhappy. And it doesn't appear to have resolved anything beyond, adding an additional tension and drama to what was already a pretty dramatic situation to begin with. So, yeah, I don't know what conclusion to draw from it, really. Probably none whatsoever.
Yeah, these sort of incidents are always going to come up, aren't they? And whenever they do, someone like me, who is constantly opposed to VAR, is always going to have it thrown back at me and say, oh, yeah, don't mind it so much now, do you? Well, yes, I do. I do, thank you. I do mind it. I still do mind it. I don't like the fact that VAR exists, and I don't like what it does, and I don't like the way it's changed the way that matches are officiated. I think this whole thing about grappling at corners is down to VAR. I think it's down to where people are trying to win penalties at corners. So that's why you're seeing both sides grappling. This whole thing of where they now, it's now down. It's in guidance about how that you're allowed to grab people as long as the ball isn't in flight. Yeah, this is true. This is before the ball's kicked, you can grab and pull and hold on to people as much as you like, but you've got to let go as soon as the ball's in flight. I mean, seriously. The game wasn't that broken. The way that VAR is seen in this country and why people are disappointed in it. And I'm not sure we're talking about people who don't like VAR. I'm talking about people who do like VAR. People who like it and then they think it doesn't work properly. And that's because it's not being used correctly or the referees are incompetent. That's a classic one, that one. They feel that VAR isn't being used in the correct way. For me, people only want VAR to correct the narrative. They want it there to make it all better, irrespective of what actually happened. If VAR steps in when you think it should do something and it doesn't, then you hate it and you think it's wrong. And the opposite is true as well. So it's more a question of it will never be what you want it to be until TV companies control VAR themselves. And then they can fabricate a whole narrative, very much like in reality TV, where the narrative is already known before it even happens. Maybe people want to see that. Maybe that's what the future of football as entertainment is. I personally like football the way it was.
I wonder whether, just to take that one step further on the reality TV side, whether that the outcomes of VAR won't be decided by two blokes in a porta cabinet at Stockley Park, but by public vote.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I think that's what the whole KMI panel is. This KMI panel now that the Premier League had, the key match incidents panel, 5 people get together to decide whether or not VAR got things right or not, or whether things should have gone to VAR. There's only one referee in this panel, but this is the final word on all decisions that are made at the moment. VAR should have sent that player off, or a penalty should have been given in that game. And I repeat, there's only one referee on this panel. The rest of them are ex-coaches, ex-players. And the purpose of this panel, it seems, is to influence the PGMOL to how it comes about its decisions based on what they say. So when they say, in future, don't call this as a penalty, or send a guy off for this, or don't send a guy off for this. And oftentimes it seems to contradict itself. But is this the right way we should be doing things? Is it that we should have a group of people just say, yeah, this has got the smell of football. This is what we think football should smell like. Because if we start saying that that's how we come up with decisions in the Premier League, once we go play football in Europe, we're screwed, aren't we? Because they're going to have their own KMI panel that is going to be coming up and say, well, this is how the smell of football is in Spain or in Italy or in France or Germany.
I agree. I do think there is some value in having, if you like, an independent, if you like, for want of a better term, regulator or some oversight. Maybe regulator is a bit of a strong word. Some kind of independent oversight over referees' decisions to sort of like say, well, actually, that decision probably wasn't the right one, or that one, either contrary to the smell of the game, or that one was a misinterpretation of the laws. But when you've got a situation like that, where it's being organised by the Premier League itself, which is a commercial entity, and then you've got it majority ex-pros, and probably one Mark Clattenburg and 4 Paul Mersons. That doesn't. I mean, I don't know who makes that up, but I mean, that's the kind of vibe that I get from that body. I don't think august body of regulators. I think a bunch of guys who are probably commercially driven, even if they're not explicitly told. So I think implicitly they understand that they're working for the Premier League, and what they're actually trying to do is to try and contribute to making a more entertaining product, rather than necessarily deciding or making a judgments or coming to conclusions based on what is fair and just in football. I think if you're going to do something like that, then it has to be standardised. So it either has to work to a specific set of standards and process laid down by the FA or UEFA or FIFA, or you don't bother with something like that at all, because, you can get, I think, probably unhelpful decisions that are being made. It's also kind of unhelpful anyway, really. I just feel that in the absence of any kind of genuine sort of like, I don't know, I guess IFAB is probably the body that should be really looking at this. I mean, they are the people who look after the laws of the game, right? Maybe they should be sort of like saying, well, actually, we're going to set up a large international body that's going to look at key match incidents across, various different leagues. And then, in our judgment, based upon our interpretation of the laws of the game that we help to define, we will then offer guidance. And we'll do it privately. Or maybe they could do it publicly, but ideally it would be better to do it privately. To sort of like say, well, we saw this, we don't think this is the right call, this is the reason why, and this is our advice. And that's that. And then it's up to the individual referees, organisations to take that on or to not take that on. When it's coming from the Premier League, it feels somewhat commercial. Just a slight tangent, but still on topic. I was talking to my colleague who's a Leicester fan, and we were talking about the incident. And it turns out rather naively said, I wonder, how that would have been called in the Championship where they don't have VAR. I mean, I would have imagined that a VAR referee would probably have actually called that as a foul straight away because, they don't have VAR to fall back on, and they would have had to have made a call. And he just laughed at me and said, you don't watch enough Championship football, mate. It's the Wild West out there. There's no way of knowing what would have happened there. I think that is something that's interesting. If we lived in a world without VAR, what would have happened? And we can't necessarily rely on things being better. It feels as though things are kind of broken in that area, or that is to say, changed. And we might just have to accept that this is a reality. The unpleasant thing, I think, is just how everything's kind of ramped up a bit. And a lot of that is the online world that we live in as well. And it just feels that little bit more unpleasant. I don't know, but that could just be age.
That's a very fair way of looking at it because, apart from people who profit from outrage, of which there are many, there are plenty of people who will go on to social media and will just give their outrage freely. Yeah, I think in many ways the cry laugh emoji was perhaps overused in the last 24 hours. I mean, I suppose in many ways, this is how football should be. Say, well, this is what the smell of the game should be. But should it be this localised? Should it be one division in one country? Or should it be a global thing? And how on earth do you get that? How do you get a consensus for that? Is this the problem with rules now? Is We've globalised football rules and we just can't handle it anymore.
It doesn't sit right with me that you've got a kind of a committee that's sitting there telling another organisation that you've effectively subbed out your officiating to, whether they're doing it right or wrong, when they're applying the laws or interpreting the laws that are global, as you say. So you should be able to have had the incident play out on any pitch anywhere in the world, and whether the officials relied on VAR technology or not, but should arrive at the right conclusion, the same conclusion that we all arrived at, and so did VAR. But it feels a bit odd that you've got it's almost like a pressure group. It reminds me of it was at Tufton Street where all the kind of right-wing loons have got their PO box numbers so they can pressurize the government and newspapers and such. That just feels a bit sinister, or maybe I'm overplaying it. But I suppose the thing that really strikes me about this is that before we had VAR, we would have still been having a conversation about this incident, probably to this extent, because of the fallout that it's led to for both sides involved. So we've brought in this really expensive piece of technology, and many, many years later, we're still having the same conversation about whether the decision was right or whether the decision was wrong. We're still calling out referees for not doing what they should do and what they shouldn't do. And, this is where it all started. If we'd just gone, look, shit happens, the guy got it wrong, he got it right, let's move on. But no one wanted to do that. And I think because, going back to your outrage culture thing, that people just can't seem to accept the fact that a decision occasionally is going to go against you. So we have to put in all this infrastructure around one division of all of the football that's played in England. And has it materially led to the game being better? Well, apart from, and it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, the kind of the drama being extended a bit yesterday, but has it made it better? Well, no, it hasn't made it better. But we have got about a good chunk of 45 minutes of content out of it. And that's just us.
Yes.
That's just us. Because the guys on Sky yesterday must have been like, this is brilliant. Right, I don't even have to think about what we have to talk about. We'll just talk about that for the next 45 minutes until the news starts. And, that's what they did. I'm sorry, it was a bit nebulous, that, wasn't it? But it's just everything don't put that in, it's everything that's wrong with the game. That's got to be on the bullshit bingo, hasn't it? It just doesn't feel right, and we're no further forward for it. We've just got delays built into the game now, which just slow everything down.
I watched the post-match reaction because, full disclosure, I was called away in the last 5 minutes and listened to the rest of the game on the radio. So I had to then go back and then watch it. So I was waiting. And I reckon it was a good 20 minutes before. I was probably exaggerating. It was a while before we saw the incident in the post-match reaction. They spent an inordinate amount of time talking about Odegaard's pass for the first goal. And I was sitting there thinking, you guys don't know this because you'll switch off by the time you won't watch that there. But because I had a need to, I was thinking, you're stringing this out. You're stringing this out because you know what people want to watch, they want to see. You're stringing this out for all the people who missed the end of the game or missed the game completely, heard about it, have gone in on their televisions, switched it on to see what happened, and then you're stringing this out for as much as possible to get to the good bit, to just keep the audience figures up. That's what you're doing here. I've worked in telly. I know how this works. I mean, I've never worked in proper telly, but I have worked. I know how this works. And I just thought, this is what we're talking about here. This is like football as entertainment, football as content, football as TV shows. And we've been able to string it out for 45 minutes. We don't charge any money. We don't make any money. And we're talking about it a lot. But at least our opinions are authentic because we're genuinely interested in it, because if we weren't, we'd talk about something else. But when there's a commercial imperative involved, then it's just, that's probably quite cynical of me, but I think that it's moments like this, I feel a little bit melancholy after moments like this, because I just think, this just all feels like the whole thing has been manufactured, even though I know that it hasn't been manufactured. It's just that the aftermath of it all just feels a little bit staged, and I just feel like we're in some kind of dystopia.
Well, what is most important, though, is the fact that Arsenal go into the final 2 weeks of the season with an advantage. And I think really if you're expecting Arsenal to mess up in this running, it wasn't going to be away at West Ham. No. If you want to see a true Arsenal foul-up of this whole thing, it's going to be at home to Burnley. That's where it's going to happen. So yeah, it's not over yet. Don't worry about that. There's still plenty of fun to happen. But what are we going to be watching this weekend, I wonder? Well, it's FA Cup final weekend, isn't it? Yeah. Terry, there's bound to be some Bundesliga on at the same time, isn't there?
There will be a Bundesliga match on, and it'll be on Sky, so maybe just watch that. Bundesliga, as you pointed out on Blue Sky, Graham, getting very exciting, particularly at the bottom. Well, actually at the bottom, when it's really, really condensed. So, yeah, absolutely. I don't think I'll bother with El Chitico. The first time in a while since I've not watched a FA Cup final, but I think I will take my football watching eyes somewhere else for this one and leave them to it.
Well, there is possibly going to be a crunch Scottish Premiership match, though, before it, the 12:30 kickoff, Celtic versus Hearts. Celtic now in the box seat. Hearts will have to win it, but then there's a round of fixtures between then and now. It could all be over by then, couldn't it, Terry?
Yeah, it could. I think Celtic have got to play Motherwell.
Yeah.
And Hearts have got Falkirk. All football matches for Hearts right now are going to be incredibly tough. In the same, see also Arsenal, just like really, really tough. God, you think Arsenal have been waiting a while for a title?
Yeah.
Hearts, like the whole of the rest of Scottish football are all looking at Hearts and hoping that they can do it. So that game against Falkirk will not be easy, even though Falkirk are comfortably the worst team in that championship group. But yeah, Motherwell, if it wasn't for Hearts this season, Motherwell would probably be the underdog story of the season. They're a terrific side, playing terrific football, and will be very, very difficult to beat. Hearts couldn't beat them at the weekend, for example.
Yeah.
And Celtic, I think, will struggle. But I just got a nasty feeling, Graham. I mean, I don't know. It's not unfair. I sit next to a Celtic fan. He's like really, really pumped and excited. But I would like to see Hearts win. And I think most non-old firm people would like to see Hearts win at this point. But my goodness, there's a strong scenario where they just snatch it from them at the very last.
Yeah, and how about some last-minute predictions? How's the rest of the season going to go? Run through all of them and say what's going to happen and who's going to go. Who's going to go up in the playoffs?
Southampton, but there'll be an investigation because of more cheating.
Yeah, more cheating. Okay, in the European Cup finals, come on, Conference League final, Palace or Vallecano?
Palace.
Villa or Freiburg?
Freiburg.
Yay!
Arsenal or PSG?
Sorry, Graham.
Yeah,
PSG.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Premier League title?
Oh, Arsenal.
Relegation?
I'm sorry, West Ham. You're going down.
Yeah. Terry, do you have any difference to those opinions?
Nope, I do not. I agree with everything that my colleague has just said.
And Scottish Premiership, where's that one going, yeah?
Again, as Terry said, it would be lovely to break the monotony, wouldn't it? And have Hearts do it.
Yeah. You noticed I didn't ask him to predict the FA Cup final because no one cares.
The team that cheats will win it.
Yeah. Oh.
It'll be a cheat that wins it.
Yeah, it will be a cheat that wins it.
Spoilers.
Well, that's what you get for El Chitico. I want to see the guy at the end, as he's etching it in there, just etching the word cheats. 25, 26. Cheats. It's already there, isn't it? Well, if you want to see what we do pick to review, then get along to sofpodcast.com, click on the link for the weekend box set, and subscribe. And you'll be getting this one, maybe get another one, but you will be there in good order for when we start again next season. And then yes, the 7 games you need to watch from Friday to Sunday. And it gives you all the information you need. And like this podcast is utterly free. Yes, free content for you. But that is all we have time for this week. So, from me, Graham Sibley, from Jan Bilton, and from Terry DeFellon, it's goodbye.
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 Get in touch with us on Blue Sky or Instagram, where we are at Sound of Football, or go to sofpodcast.com. Like us, share us, rate us and review us. Do it now!
Do not adjust your set. We control the horizontal. We control the vertical.